Welcome to the second ever episode of the Fantasy Lab. We did top 40 running backs last video. Now today we're going to be giving you our top 40 wide receivers. We're going to be breaking them down for you. I'm going to do the odds. Ryan's going to do the evens. So let's just get right into this. At number one, we got Puka Nakua. Puka finished as a wide receiver one last year, and we honestly expect that same high finish again. There's really no way that shouldn't happen. He's got Stafford back. The offense back. The offense is back and healthy again. The rehab little stint was a little bit concerning over the offseason, but honestly, not too much to worry about. He gets the volume, elite volume. He plays in the slot. He's everything you want. He gets the touchdowns, and honestly, he probably will get a little bit more this year. I think Devontae probably takes a step back and isn't as so much as a red zone threat. And they addressed no wide receivers in the draft or the offseason, which is even better for Puka and Devontae. Because obviously, at their pick, everyone thought they were going maybe Kenyon Sadiq or Makai Lemon, but when you don't trust anyone, it's going to be running back the same exact offense, and Puka looks to repeat that volume that he did last year.
Number two is Jamar Chase. He finished as a wide receiver four, even on a down year with Burrow out half the year, and they had Browning playing quarterback for a few games. Chase probably has the most upside out of everyone, out of all the receivers, just because of the big play potential and all that. If Burrow stays healthy, he could easily finish as the top, maybe probably the top one receiver like he did in 2024. Um, there's really no concerns with Chase, no injury history. It's just Burrow staying healthy, and if that happens, the year will be great for Chase, and you won't regret your pick.
At number three, we got Jackson Smith and Jigba. JSN had a historic year last year, playing in the slot with Sam Darnold as his quarterback, and he looks to repeat that same value again this year. It's definitely likely, but we have to remember that Clint Kubiak left this offseason. The offense could look a little bit different. But, I mean, other than that, we look to see JSN probably just doing the same thing he did last year, a lot of touchdowns, a lot of receptions, and a lot of yards.
Number four is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. He finishes the wide receiver three last 3 years straight, and there's really no reason for it not to happen again. There, there's a change in the offensive coordinators, but there was a change last year, and he still finishes the wide receiver three. So there's really no concerns with that. He's like safe and consistent. He never gets hurt. I mean, he got hurt last year, but he played through injury. So he's tough. I mean, there's really no questions with Amon-Ra. He'll get a ton of catches. He'll get some touchdowns. He'll be a great player once again in the explosive Lions offense.
At number five, we got CeeDee Lamb, finished as the wide receiver 22 last year. CeeDee had a very up and down year last year. Obviously, with all the injuries, it pretty plagued his season. And a lot of the games we saw George Pickens really break out, even when CeeDee was on the field, which was honestly pretty surprising for most NFL viewers. I think though this year that CeeDee is really going to return to form like he was in years prior. I think Pickens takes a little bit of a step back. CeeDee definitely is the better wide receiver and demands volume and targets. So I think we look at a very high year for CeeDee for sure.
Number six is going to be Justin Jefferson. He finished as the wide receiver 21 last year in a very bad year with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. Hopefully, Kyler Murray can change his performance this year. Um, I don't think with all the weapons there, I don't think Jefferson has top three potential, but he's obviously elite talent, and he could finish. I would say top five, 5 to 10 range. Um, he's he's probably one of the best receivers in football. It's just kind of unfortunate. There's a lot of mouths to feed there, and the quarterback play isn't the best. But yeah, that's it.
At number seven, we got Drake London, finished as a wide receiver 19 last year. London, when on the field, when healthy, is one of the most dominant wide receivers in football. Big jump ball, physical wide receiver that demands a bunch of touchdowns and will get the ball definitely in that offense. I think this year as well with Kevin Stefanski coming over and their new OC, I think that London could have even a better year. But again, we have to remember the quarterback situation that we got going on with Tua and Penix. I mean, London has proved to perform with Michael Penix at quarterback, but it's kind of very volatile. Like he has some up and down games. He's never really truly consistently going to get you 20 a week, so that's why he's a little bit lower. Um, Again, though, Penix, if he's starting at quarterback, I think London could have a higher finish than if Tua is starting, so we have to be aware for that.
Number eight is going to be Nico Collins. He finished as a wide receiver eight last year. Nothing really changed on the team besides they improved their O line, so there really is no reason. They added Tank Dell, so got another weapon across from him. Um, The defense is still elite. They'll have the ball a ton. CJ Stroud's obviously a big question mark, but I don't think Nico Collins is one of the best receivers in football. They're going to feed him no matter what. He's big. He'll score a ton of touchdowns. He's super fast. There's not many questions with Nico. He's had a few small injuries, but no really concerns there. Nico Collins that should be around the wide receiver 8 this year.
At number 9, we got A.J. Brown, who finished as a wide receiver 11 last year. For these rankings, we're assuming A.J. Brown is a Patriot on June 1st. If A.J. Brown is in New England, he's immediately the wide receiver 1, the X. He's going to get the ball a ton. He's with his old coach, Mike Vrabel. So obviously there's a lot of connection there, and they're going to want to get him the ball because that was the whole problem in Philly, where he was demanding the ball and wasn't getting it enough. AJ, obviously, though, is one of the best wide receivers in football. Talent-wise, we're not looking at fantasy. He's easily a top 5 wide receiver. So he's definitely going to produce in this offense, in a very good offense that's only going to improve from here in New England. And Josh McDaniels as your OC is better than Kevin Patullo last year, definitely for sure. I think Brown, if in New England, is primed for a big bounce back year. Could we see him as a top 8 finish? Yes, for sure. But again, we have to remember that New England spreads the ball around a lot. It's not really, and again, that has to play in with that there wasn't a true 1 last year, but the ball does go around a lot in that offense. We have to be aware of that. That Diggs could not be getting, not Diggs, AJ Brown could be not getting like the 15 catches a game, 15 targets a game that we could think that could happen, but we don't know for sure. But yeah, Brown definitely finished high.
Number 10 is going to be Chris Olave. Last year he finished as the wide receiver 6. The only reason we got him a little lower is just because the addition of Tyson. Tyson's obviously a great receiver too. Should take away some targets away from him. But the offense should improve this year with Shock improving and the team just getting all around better this year. Olave does have some injury concerns. That's also why he dropped a little bit. One more concussion and his career could be over. So there are some concerns, but the talent's definitely there. And if he can stay healthy, there's no doubt in my mind he'll finish 10.
At number 11, we got George Pickens, who was the wide receiver 5 last year. Again, how we talked about with CeeDee Lamb. Pickens obviously is a great talent, and he's a dominant wide receiver, and he gets the ball a ton. I don't think he's going to get the volume that he got last year, especially when CeeDee's back and fully healthy, as well as I think the Cowboys defense has improved from last year, which is going to allow Dak to not have to throw the ball 40, 50 times a game to keep Dallas in it. I still think that Pickens will be very good for fantasy, and he'll get a lot of receptions and a lot of yards, but I think some of the touchdown work will go down with CeeDee being a dominant red zone guy. And I think that, again, he just loses some of the volume that he had last year.
Number 12 is going to be Malik Neighbors. Obviously had the ACL injury, and he just had to clean up like another knee surgery, another knee thing happened recently. So the injury is definitely a major concern with him. If or when he gets on the field, it's a risky pick, but if he's fully healthy, you get healthy Neighbors in the field, you're getting way better than wide receiver 12 finish. He's obviously a top receiver in football, and there's really not much competition on that team. He'll get peppered with targets all day, like he did his rookie year. So he's only getting better, young. So yeah.
At 13, we got Rashee Rice, wide receiver 40, finished last year. Obviously, that has to play into how he missed the first half of the season, and then he sat out the last few games. Rice is not the best wide receiver talent in the world, and there's obviously a ton of concerns around him with all his legal troubles. So obviously that comes into play this year. But again, we have to remember that in this offense, Rice is clearly the wide receiver 1, and he's going to demand the ball, and he's playing the slot in an Eric Bieniemy-led offense. So he's going to get the targets. He's going to get the red zone work. We saw him lining up for a running back for some plays last year, right? He was taking handoffs. Yeah. So again, they want to use him. He's going to be utilized in that offense more than anyone. And Mahomes, that's clearly his best target out there for his receivers because that receiver room is really lackluster. Maybe you see a little bit of a jump from Xavier Worthy this year, but I don't think it's too much to worry about. I think that for Rice's value, or wide receiver 13, he could definitely finish higher, but it's just definitely a little bit of a risky pick with the injuries and legal troubles for sure.
Number 14 is going to be T. Higgins. He finished as a wide receiver 15 last year. T. Higgins is in one of the most explosive offenses in all football, one of the best offenses. He's obviously the wide receiver 2 in his own offense, so the upside is a little capped on him. He's not going to ever finish as wide receiver 5 with Jamar Chase there. So
Number 15, we have Garrett Wilson. Garrett finished as the wide receiver 62 last year, but obviously was hurt literally pretty much the entire year, shut down very early into the year. When he was on the field, even with Justin Fields, you could say some of it was garbage time, but he was averaging 20 plus fantasy points a game. He is going to be in the slot again this year. Um, or they might throw Omar Cooper in there and he might play the X, but I think that he is going to have a good bounce back year. I think Geno Smith's a better quarterback than Justin Fields or Tyrod Taylor is, and I think that he's going to get the volume and a lot of yards. But again, you have to remember he's in the Jets offense, so we don't know how that's really going to go, and it's always a little bit of scarce when you're going into picking a bad team in fantasy football.
Number 16 is going to be Devonta Smith. He finished as wide receiver 20 last year, and he's probably one of my favorite picks this year. With assuming AJ Brown's gone, he's a wide receiver one, a good offense, and he's gonna get with no AJ, he's gonna get a ton of volume. With last year's games when AJ was out, I think he averaged like 16 points, something around there, which is obviously really good. Lemon is now the wide receiver too. Lemon's not he's good. He's a rookie, but I don't think he's gonna be too involved. Where Smitty's gonna get that much volume taken away.
At number 17, we have Ted McMillan, finished as the wide receiver 16 last year. I'm very indifferent on Ted this year. I think that sophomore seasons are historically a sophomore slump. But again, Ted's an elite talent and elite deep ball wide receiver. I just think that this Panthers offense is a little bit shaky. I'm not the biggest believer in Bryce Young at quarterback. I think that could just like Ted's really not going to be this volume guy that's going to get a lot of receptions, and we're playing PPR here, so that's what really is the biggest concern when we're talking about fantasy relevance. So I think that's why he's a little bit capped at his peak. I don't think he could ever be really a top 10 fantasy wide receiver with the situation that he's in right now. So I think he's a good safe pick that's going to get you probably 10 plus fantasy points a game. But those 40 points per game, we could kiss those out the window again. With you're not getting the amount of volume that you need to do that.
Number 18 is going to be Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle in the new offense has a lot of upside with the Broncos. They're one of the best teams in football. Hopefully, Bo Nix can get healthy again, and there'll be a ton of upside here. Waddle's obviously like a speedster. He can get these 70-yard bombs all the time. Waddle.
At number 19, we have Zay Flowers, who finished as the wide receiver 7 last year. Shockingly enough, I didn't even realize that Flowers finished that high, but I guess that has to do with a lot of the 40-point game that he had at the end of the season and the 40-point game that he had to start the season, so that definitely makes up for it. Zay with a healthy Lamar looks pretty promising this year, honestly. They didn't really address too much in the offseason or the draft. Obviously, they took some flyers on Jacoby Lane and another wide receiver in the draft, but I don't think that's enough to be like, oh, watch out for Zay's volume and stuff like that. He's still going to be the slot guy. He's still going to be the number one target in this offense. So um, a little bit of changes with the offense and who's going to be calling it. Obviously, new head coach, new system, new regime. But I think that honestly may benefit Zay because it's kind of a fresh start and he was kind of stuck in the similar role that he's been since the beginning of his career. So I think we could expect even a higher finish than wide receiver 19 for Zay Flowers this year. We could be seeing him as even a top 15, top 12 wide receiver for sure.
Number 20 is going to be Terry McLaurin. I think Terry McLaurin's in for a big year. The Commanders bouncing back big time this year with McDaniel's healthy and Terry's healthy this year. They should go back to that 2024 McLaurin that we had, where he had top finish. I think McLaurin's gonna be great this year, and there's really as long as everyone stays healthy and the Commanders are good, I think he's in for a big year this year.
Yeah, the new OC David Blau also said how he wants to get him 15 plus targets a game, so that's definitely a good sign. At number 21, we have Lad McConkey, wide receiver 30 last year. Lad had an extremely let down sophomore year, and I think that has to play with a lot of the fact that Keenan Allen came back and was running that slot role and was doing really good at it throughout the entire year, as well as QJ kind of emerged as a reliable fantasy wide receiver and just in real life as well. My only concern with Lad is again, there's a couple more mouths to feed. Trey Harris probably will improve from last year, but with a healthy old line, I think that Herbert's gonna have more time to throw, and Lad's gonna be able to develop his routes a little bit better, and he's gonna be able to produce definitely higher and get back to his rookie year numbers. And if he does, we're looking at a top 12 fantasy wide receiver.
Number 22 is going to be Davante Adams. He finished as a wide receiver 9 last year, but I think he's definitely due for some regression this year. He's only getting older. His Stafford's getting a little bit older, even though I think Stafford was really good this year. Um, with Puka even getting better each year, he should take a little bit more of those touchdowns away. So the 14 touchdown year that he had within like 14 games, probably not going to happen again, I think. So I got him a little lower. He's still a big red zone threat. He'll score probably 10 to 12 of those. The injuries are definitely a little concerned. He had a hamstring injury, and when you get the receivers get older, the hamstring injuries can be like a killer of their careers. So,
At number 23, we have Emeka Ibuka, who finished as the wide receiver 23 last year. Um, Ibuka is a really interesting case this year because when he was healthy last year, we saw him playing as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. Uh, but again, it looked to be that he got injured in week 6, week 7, and yeah, and he decided to try to play through it, and ultimately that plagued Ibuka's season like really, really badly. He wasn't even fantasy relevant after that, and honestly, he was borderline droppable at the end of the year. I think though you lose Mike Evans in the offseason, and Ibuka now he's back as a wide receiver 1. If he's got the whole offseason to get healthy. I think he could repeat the volume that he had in the beginning of the year for sure. Obviously, Chris Godwin's going to be back fully healthy. They add Ted Hurst in the draft, and you still have Jalen McMillan. So there's still definitely some mouths to feed on that offense for sure. But Baker loves hitting the slot, and I think Ibuka could be primed for a big year. And if you're seeing him at wide receiver 23, and you could get him in your 4th, 5th round, probably even 6th, and you could get him, that could be possibly a top 10 fantasy wide receiver this year. So I think that value in Ibuka is really good going into fantasy drafts this year.
number 4 is going to be Jameson Williams. He finished as the wide receiver 12 last year. I think he's due for a little bit worse year. He obviously had a big breakout year last year with, I don't know, he was averaging probably like 18 points the last half of the season, which let him be the wide receiver 12. That was with Sam Laporta out for that entire span. With Laporta back, he's going to take some targets away. Laporta's a good player, and he's gonna like demand targets. So Jamo's going to lose a little bit of work. So wide receiver 24 around there is where I see him finishing.
Number 25, we have DJ Moore, who finished as a wide receiver 35 last year. A little bit concerning considering he played all 17 games last year for the Chicago Bears. But again, we looked at that offense. You had 2 other wide receivers that were also very, very good on the team, in Luther Burden and Rome Odunze. So Moore was kind of struggling to get targets. But again, we saw when Burden and Odunze went down in games, like in that Week 16 game against the Packers, he stepped up as a wide receiver 1, and he produced at a very high level. I think with Josh Allen, Moore's primed for a huge year. Honestly, personally, I know he's getting old and up there in age, but Allen loves a deep ball, and we saw when they added Brandon Cooks at the end of the year last year. Brandon Cooks was getting great volume and great targets and a lot of yards when he was on the Bills offense. I think Josh Allen, that's something that he was missing last year, and I think for Moore to come in and step in and be that guy this year, I think that he could produce at a very high level. And I think that for his value, it's a very good pick this year in your fantasy drafts.
Number 6 or 26, we have Luther Burden. We have him a little lower than most people. I really don't. He could break out. There's a lot of potential here, but we're kind of just betting it off one playoff run that we saw where we had a bunch of good games. Rome's still there. Rome's a great player, and he got hurt at the end, so he lost a lot of volume because he was injured. Colston Loveland's also really good. There's a lot of mouths to feed, and I just really don't see the Luther Burden breakout happening where he becomes a wide receiver 1. So I don't. The wide receiver 26 is about where he should finish. I don't see the upside where he can finish the top 12 receiver with all the other targets there.
At number 27, we have Carnell Tate. Obviously, Carnell Tate was taken in the 4th pick of this year's NFL draft. That should be saying a lot going into this year. You take him at pick 4 over guys like Arvell Reese, Jeremiah Love. Obviously, he's pick number 3, but Carnell Tate for sure should be the number 1 wide receiver in this offense. I think a lot of the fact that he wasn't as productive in college was was because of the fact that he was behind Jeremiah Smith, who was the best wide receiver to come into the NFL draft this year. He's the biggest name for sure. I think Carnell Tate should have a good year. I think Cam Ward is due for some progression for sure. Better offense, better system, new OC who really helped Malik Neighbors and Jackson Dart get better for sure. I think Dable is going to be a big key to Tate and Ward's success this year, and I think that Tate can honestly have a pretty big year for sure. Obviously, Wandale Robinson, who's still there, who's going to probably play the slot, and Tate's going to go out into the X, which could be a little bit concerning for not as much volume as you'd hope, but I think that Tate's still going to produce at a pretty fairly high level.
Number 28 is going to be Mike Evans. Mike Evans now has major injury concerns with hamstring injuries last 2-3 seasons, I think. Um, yeah, obviously going to a new situation where it's probably better in San Francisco. There's there's a lot of mouths to feed there, but Brock Purdy is very good. The offense is very good, and Kyle Shanahan's also one of the best coaches. If Evans can stay healthy, there's no doubt in my mind he'll be above wide receiver 28. It's just that's a big if now, back to back years where he's had hamstring injuries. So that's why we have him at 28.
Number 29, we have Rome Odunze, who finished at the wide receiver 41 last year. Odunze started off the year super hot last year. He was looking like a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. He was demanding the ball in the end zone and getting a lot of red zone work, a lot of touchdowns. But then he just slowly started to fall off a cliff, and there was games where he had one catch for 6 yards. I think Odunze he's a very volatile player this year, and he's a very risky pick in your fantasy drafts this year because he could finish as high as a top 15 fantasy wide receiver, but he could also finish as low as a wide receiver 40. It all depends on what happens and who Caleb wants to get the ball to. Because again, I think Luther Burden is in front of him, and he's a better talent for sure. And then as well as Colston Loveland is going to probably get the ball even more than Odunze as well, because they're going to want to use him as well. So I think it's a little bit concerning going into this year. If he's definitely, it's a high risk pick, but it's definitely high reward if Odunze pans out the way that you'd hope.
All right, number 30, we have Jordan Tyson. He's obviously drafted, I think, the 8th overall pick this year. So they used a lot of draft capital to get him, which they believe in him a lot. Offense obviously is improving. Tyson is a great receiver. I think he might have been the best receiver in the class. Just there are injury concerns with him. I think he had an ACL tear a couple years ago. If an Olave injury happens, then Tyson's going to be a big time top 15, 10 finish. I mean, if that doesn't happen though, with Chris Olave being an elite receiver, around the wide receiver 30 finish is what's going to happen.
At the number 31, we got Christian Watson, who finished as a wide receiver 46 last year. Obviously, Watson was hurt for most of the year. That's why he finished so low. But when he came back, he looked really, really promising. We thought he'd probably lose a step and lose some of that speed and that big play capability that he had before he was injured. But no, he looked exactly the same, and he honestly looked even better. I think Watson, for this value at your wide receiver 31, he could finish a lot higher. And again, the Packers went out this offseason. They lost Romeo Doubs, and and they lost Tavion Wicks. So now there's even less mouths to feed in this offense, where you only have Golden and Jaden Reed as your other wide receivers. And Love definitely likes hitting the deep ball, and Watson is the deep ball guy. So I think that he could honestly have a pretty high finish this year, but obviously there's a lot of risk there with him staying healthy. I don't really even know if he's had a fully healthy season yet in his NFL career. So that's the biggest concern. But I think for his value, he's definitely a good pick.
Number 32 is going to be Courtland Sutton. They obviously finished as wide receiver 13 last year, but they obviously added Jalen Waddle, kind of showing they don't believe in Sutton to be the wide receiver one. He is aging, so I think he's 31 going to 30. He's 31 years old this year. That he's obviously getting a little older, so he might slow down a little bit. But he was still a good receiver last year. He'll still be involved in the offense, but he's not the focal point anymore now that he's getting older. So the wide receiver 32 finished with Jalen Waddle there.
At number 33, we have DK Metcalf, who finished as the wide receiver 26 last year. Just announced how Rodgers is coming back, so I'm not as high as on DK Metcalf. I just think that offense is just incredibly mid, and that DK Metcalf himself will be incredibly mid. I don't think that DK Metcalf will ever have these 40-point games, even though he has the capability to with his athleticism and his speed. It's just the offense is really, really confusing and concerning. I guess like with Mike McCarthy calling plays and running the offense, and that's your new head coach, that we could see some signs of progression, and the offense looks a little bit better than it did last year. I just think I'm just not high on Aaron Rodgers coming back as quarterback. I'm not really high on anyone in that Steelers offense. I just think it's really going to be a repeat of last year, and it's just going to be incredibly mid.
Number 34, we have Michael Wilson. Finishes the wide receiver 10. He had a crazy run with Jacoby Brissett at the end of the year. I don't think that's going to repeat, though, with Cardinals obviously still going to be bad. Marv is going to be healthy this year. So Marv is he was a 4th overall pick. They're going to want to use him. It's a new coach and everything there now. So stuff could change a lot. Wilson obviously proved he's a good wide receiver in the NFL. So he's going to be used a good amount. I just don't think the same usage from last year is going to repeat again.
At number 35, we have Brian Thomas Jr., who finished as wide receiver 42 last year. Now, this is the biggest what if this year going into fantasy football. Last year, Brian Thomas Jr. was a first round pick or an early second round pick across all fantasy leagues, and pretty much everyone going into drafts wanted to get their hands on BTJ. I know I did. I know Ryan did. Um, but again, he really, really disappointed last year, and it was honestly really concerning because there was no signs, there was nothing really that changed besides them adding Jacoby Myers at the trade deadline. Um, I think a lot has to be in the fact of that BTJ was dropping a lot of balls, and that might have just curbed his confidence, as well as the fact that a lot of his success in his rookie year came with Mac Jones at quarterback. So the T-Law connection may not be there, but again, BTJ is a top 10 talent and could be a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. It's just all a big if, but it's definitely the biggest gamble that I'm willing to take in fantasy drafts this year. With Travis Hunter also looking like he's going to go move to full time corner, which I think is just only going to benefit him. Obviously, we had the emergence of Patrick Washington last year, who got a lot of targets and demanded a lot of volume later in the year. But again, BTJ is definitely the best wide receiver in that offense, and I think that he's definitely a top 10 talent, but it's just the biggest if he's going to perform or not.
Number 36 is going to be Marvin Harrison. He's been a huge letdown these last 2 years. I think he actually does bounce back a little bit this year with the new coaching staff. I think they're going to get him a lot more involved this year, which will lead to Marv being much better than he was in the last 2 years.
At number 37, we have Jacoby Myers, who finished as a wide receiver 32 last year. Obviously, I just talked all about BTJ. Myers is just a super safe pick in fantasy drafts. He performs every year at a very good level. He's going to get targets. He's going to get some touchdowns. He's going to get yards, and that's what you want to see in a fantasy wide receiver in a PPR format. So again, it's just a safe pick, and you can't go wrong with Jacoby Myers.
Number 38 is going to be Makai Lemon. He's obviously going to step into the Eagles offense, and hopefully he's taking that wide receiver 2 role with A.J. Brown leaving. And that offense, wide receiver 2 role, should have a good amount of volume there. So he should be a solid receiver in his rookie year. I don't think the upside's going to be there because Jalen Hurts just isn't that good throwing in the middle of the field. That's where Lemon's going to work for the most part. So.
At number 39, we have Alec Pierce, who finished as wide receiver 28 last year. That was with a healthy Daniel Jones when he was performing his best. I think that Pierce really, it's pretty. Obviously, he got the huge bag in the offseason this year, but that's for an NFL wide receiver where he is performing best and he's looked at higher than he would in a PPR fantasy football format. Again, Alec Pierce in fantasy football isn't getting 10 plus targets a game, even though he's getting paid like he is in real life. It's because he's that talented as a deep ball wide receiver. But again, he's not going to get that volume that you see. Yes, he'll break off some 50-yard touchdowns, but I just also, as well as with Daniel Jones coming in with a lot of uncertainty this year, I don't know if he's going to perform at a high elite level to even call him like a top 25 fantasy wide receiver this year. I think he probably takes even a step back because I'm not really a big believer in Daniel Jones this year.
Number 40 is going to be Michael Pittman. Obviously, we talked about DK a little bit, just how the offense isn't that good. The upside just really isn't there with Pittman just because of Rodgers and all that. Pittman's going to move into the slot, I think, this year. So hopefully that does have a little bit, make him a little bit better for fantasy. But there's really not much to look forward here with Pittman in this year's offense.
All right, well, that is our top 40 fantasy wide receivers heading into this year. Stay tuned, as soon we'll be doing our top 20 tight ends. That'll be out next. But again, if you could like or appreciate this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. It'd be much appreciated as we continue to try to grow this channel. Pumping out video once a week is probably likely for how we're going to try to grow. But again, that's about it. Thank you guys.